Thank you, Jack, and let me add my welcome to all of you to the 25th class induction to the Colorado State University Sports Hall of Fame. By way of explanation, as you heard, I do have two other events to go to this evening, two other speeches to make, and at least one of them better require formal attire or you'll feel significantly overdressed. Now, the good news for all of you is that when there's a night like this with multiple events, that means that Kara Neth, my Director of Administrative Communications, will take some of the pressure off by writing the remarks. And that's very good news for you for two reasons. One, it means because I'll be reading things that Kara wrote, there's a chance there's something in here worth hearing, unlike the things that I write. And two, when Kara writes these, I will be far less likely to just ramble around and get off track and have to correct myself. So Kara has written a speech about Colorado State University's approach to excellence in athletics. But I suspect that if there's anybody in this room who doesn't understand that that approach will be a relentless focus on quality through a clean program, one that considers student athletes as students first and foremost, and one who will see its role and balance appropriate to a great American land-grant university that traces its 150-year heritage back to the desk and pen of Abraham Lincoln, then nothing I can say tonight will convince you of those things, no matter how well Kara Neth has written them. So I'm not going to use this speech. You should all read it, though. It's really good. But I was struck by a quote in this, and it's a quote that she selected about excellence from Colin Powell. And it says, "Excellence is not an exception, it's a prevailing attitude." Now, I wonder about that. Of course, Powell meant it in the context of organizational excellence, and as someone who headed the world's most powerful military, it's understandable. I've met General Powell. I've had a chance to read some of his things, and I agree with him in both the organizational sense and in the sense that an attitude of commitment is a prerequisite to excellence. But individual excellence, the excellence that, as Jack said, we celebrate at an event like a Hall of Fame induction, individual excellence is, I think, about more, much more than just an attitude. And to make that point to you, I want to tell you a story about two photographs that hang in my office. The first is a pretty small one. It's a framed snapshot, really. It's faded. The brown tint to it would give away that it's a circa 1970s photograph. It shows a fairly isolated baseball field against a flat as a pancake backdrop somewhere in the Midwest. There's a gangly-looking young man sitting directly on top of first base in the photograph. He's alone in an isolated field. The only thing on it is him and his baseball glove. He's got his knees hugged to his chest. The game is clearly over. Everyone's gone. But he can't get up. He's having one of those learning moments, and we've all had them, where however you want to phrase it, whether you've given your all, whether you've done your best, whether you've left everything on the field, what you've done just wasn't good enough. In that particular case, he'd let his teammates down. He's having one of those moments, one of those, I know I've got to go, I understand the bigger context, but I just can't move right now moments. He's lost inside his head. He has no idea that everybody's left, and he certainly had no idea until about 3.5 decades later that his coach's daughter was snapping that photograph from the edge of the dugout. She was the first girl that he ever had well, that's what happens when Kara doesn't write these. That's a story for another evening. The photograph that stands next to is much larger. It's autographed. It's a professionally framed photograph of an iconic image of Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. He's jumping for joy. It was taken the day that he learned that he'd been voted into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. Then the photographer has captured that jump against the backdrop of the front gates to Wrigley Field at the corner of Clark and Addison, and the joy of that jump really captures Banks' joy for the game, that let's play too attitude. I think the story of those two photographs tells the difference between competition and excellence. Individual excellence, not organizational excellence. No one would confuse the teams that Ernie Banks played on with organizational excellence. I get that. Although the '69 team with Williams, again, that's a story for another night. Let's start with competition. Human beings are about competition. It's part of who we are. It's part of where we're from. It's in our DNA. Over the millennia, our competitive instincts have been honed. We found more socially appropriate ways to channel them. We learn from them. That's what that first photograph's about, the snapshot. It's about learning from competition. We compete against each other. We compete against external forces. We even compete against ourselves. But we all compete. But we don't all excel. Individual excellence, that second photograph of Ernie Banks. Individual excellence is rare. It's a gem. As human beings, we know it when we see it, whether it's a painting or an aria, a poem, a scientific breakthrough, an athletic performance. And we instinctively recognize it, and something deep in our soul celebrates it and applauds it because we know how hard that is to produce. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the jewels of individual athletic performance. And so to our awardees and our inductees, when you cross the stage tonight, what I hope you'll hear in our applause is all of us saying to you, well done, and thank you for letting us see it. Because when we saw your moments of excellence, we instinctively recognized them. And something inside us celebrated them, applauded, and our spirits soared. We got up off that base on the deserted baseball field, and we jumped for joy like Mr. Cub. So as the president of Colorado State University, to all of you who will cross this stage this evening, I know I speak for everyone here when I say to you, you have our congratulations, but probably more importantly, you have our thanks. Thanks to all of you for being here. Go Rams!